Hello, everybody. Welcome to our video on building your college list. I am your presenter for today, Spencer Barr, Santa Barbara High School College and Career Center. All right, so today's agenda, we will go over an overview of where to start this whole process of building your list. We'll talk about how to consider all aspects of a college experience. We will definitely talk about the importance of a balanced list and what exactly that means. Go over some resources for you to utilize during this process. And then also basically how to stay organized through all of this. Okay, so where to start? I have this nice little pyramid image here. In order to start building your list, you need to start with a strong foundation. Once you have that strong foundation and priorities figured out, then we go into the next tier, which is refining and actually doing the legwork of searching for colleges. And then once you have a nice list, maybe pretty extensive list, then we go into the top tier, which is how to evaluate and then come up with your final list. So speaking of the foundation, before you begin this process, or even a little bit into this process, you need to have a discussion with your family. And your family is your parents or your guardians, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, friends even, okay? That's your family. You need to have a discussion with them. It can be around the dinner table. It can be during a car ride, vacation time, even take your mom out for coffee and discuss this. It's really important for you to share what is important to you when you're looking into going off to a four-year school, or even taking a gap year before a four-year school, or a two-year school and transfer. There's all sorts of methods to get where you want to go, but it's really important for you to share what's important to you. And please recognize that you, the student, and parents and guardians and other family members will probably have different priorities. It's important to talk about those. You're all coming from different places and again, might not have exactly the same priorities. So voice them, have them out in the air. That'll make this process a lot easier going forward. And then you also want to talk about a family budget. Okay? A four-year college is not free. A two-year college is not even completely free either. Going to Santa Barbara City College and using the Promise and then transferring makes it very affordable, but it's still not free. Okay? So you need to have some sort of a family budget in mind. So voice that and talk about that. So this is a huge list of different priorities out there when you are thinking about building your college list and thinking about what's important to you, okay? These are not in any specific order. You can pick and choose what's important to you. One student will have different priorities to another student, okay? So by all means, go through this list and check off what is important to you and what you want to factor into this, this process, because this will help shape your list, what these priorities are. Okay. And if you have no idea right now, maybe try to prioritize these in order of importance. Like what sounds good to you? Is location really important to you? So do you want to leave California or do you want to stay in California? That's a big factor. Okay? The size of a school, big schools can be up to 50, 60,000 students, or small schools can be as little as 300 or so. Okay, so that's a huge range there. On the right-hand side of this list, time to graduate can be extremely important for some students, or it might not matter to you. Job placement, housing, Are you going to be living off campus most of the time? Will you be in dorms for 4 years? That could be really important. The very last one on this list, athletics. Are you either thinking about trying to participate in a Division I, Division II, Division III, or NAIA collegiate sports? Or are you just looking for maybe an intramural soccer program? Okay, so athletics could be really important. Hop back over to the left-hand side, religious affiliation. That can be extremely important to some students. And then cost of attendance, that goes into that family budget. That could be a sorting priority for you. So again, this is just a list of different ways that you can sort your priorities. Try to go through and pick a few of these. And again, if you have no idea, then try to rank them in terms of what you think is most important to you right now. But then keep an open mind too. So once you have those priorities at least somewhat sorted, then you can start going onto websites and books to start searching and trying to narrow down a list. Okay, if we're just looking at the United States, there are about 3,800 colleges and universities just within the United States. Okay? That does include 2 years and 4 years, but that's a lot of colleges to try to narrow down. So that's why going back to that previous screen of your priorities is important to try to identify. Okay? So once you have that, all our students have access to SCOIR, and that's the way that one is pronounced, SCOIR is SCOIR, and californiacolleges.edu. Our students have accounts with those, and those are great websites, platforms to search for schools. Okay? The California Colleges is, it's a nationwide search, but their focus is on public and private California colleges, but you can still search throughout. Another great one is through the parent company of the SAT, College Board. They have a really wonderful search engine called Big Future. Other search engines, you can look at Niche or Niche, however you want to pronounce that. That one's pretty nice because it factors in data from the Department of Education, but also factors in student reviews in their search. So that's kind of nice. And College Data is all about data points. So if you're sort of a data junkie, College Data might be a good way a good platform to use when searching. And then if you like physical books, like myself, I love physical books. I always turn to, on my nightstand is actually the Fisk Guide and also a Princeton Review Guide. So nice, pretty fat books like that, but I really like them. I reference them all the time. And then you can also use ranking lists to help you with the search process, but a word of caution with this one. Don't only use ranking lists when you are generating this list. Okay? You can reference it and you can use it as a good way to find other schools that are maybe similar to colleges that you already know you like. But please don't just use ranking lists at their face value. Okay? Use that in addition to these other ways to search. All right. So as you're going through these websites and these portals and starting to identify colleges that you are thinking about and interested in, while you're doing this, also some considerations to think about. You want to be open-minded in developing this initial list. I mean, this initial list could be 30, 40 schools, okay? So don't worry about that, but try to keep an open mind. Just remember that this first initial list is just a draft. Okay? You can remove schools, you can add schools, you can tweak schools. Just keep in mind it's a draft. Okay, and then keep your mind open to other possibilities. Be open to the idea of leaving California. And there's some fantastic options outside of California that can be a fantastic fit. Okay, so be open to that idea. Be open to going to a place where it snows a lot of the time. Okay? Be open to going to a place where it's super humid in the south. Okay? Just be open-minded through this whole process. While you're going through this process and searching using these websites, you will come across schools that maybe you've never heard of. Okay? That's part of this being open-minded as well, is if you find something that under your search pops up as a top hit for your search that you've never heard of, do some exploration. Go to their website, see what their school is about, see where they're located, see what their size is. Do a little bit more research. Don't just dismiss the school because you haven't heard of it, okay? And again, I'll harp on this a lot. Your first initial draft can have a lot of schools on it. So 30, 40 schools, that's okay. Eventually, we're gonna narrow that down. But your first draft is first draft. Okay, so we've gone through that foundation. Okay? Now let's go into refining. So after you have that initial draft of 30, 40 schools on it, now you can start to dig into what those applications actually look like, what they're asking for. Do you seem to have a good academic fit to those schools? So number one on this page here, admission requirements. Okay, so take your high school GPA and look at the average GPA of the admitted students. Are you close? Are you way under, way over, or right in the middle? Okay. Take a look at the SAT and ACT or subject tests. Are they required? Okay. Things have changed rapidly in the past 3 months. There are all sorts of test optional schools out there. So if you have a test score, or if you don't have a test score, if you're going to submit a test score, those are some considerations to think about. I have here for class of 2021, the majority of colleges will consider test scores optional. Okay. So as of right now, there are over 1,200 four-year schools that have said that test scores are optional. But it's important to think about if you have a good score, you might want to submit it. And if you're applying for any merit scholarships, it's really important to submit a test score. Okay, have I met subject requirements for my major? So all of you, the plan is to graduate Santa Barbara High School with your A through G requirements met. And so those will be the minimum requirements to be admitted to the school. But are you thinking about applying to a STEM major and you need more science? Okay. The A through G might not be enough. So you have to think about specific subject requirements for your specific major. And then, do I have compelling stories and activities? I mentioned this on this page here because some colleges will only really ask for your test scores and your GPA, and that's it. They won't ask for recommendations. They won't ask for activities and things like that. So those might be easier for you to get into if you don't really have compelling stories and activities. If you're really strong in your academic areas, if you really have a strong GPA and test score, and that's where your focus have been, then maybe a college that has an application that's more bare bones and easy to complete might be something for you to consider. On the flip side, if you do have those really compelling stories, but maybe your GPA and test scores aren't quite so good, then a college that asks a lot more on the application could be to your benefit. Okay, this slide is super important. Okay. You have your list of maybe 30 colleges on it. Okay. You need to organize them in terms of which schools are ones that you are reaching for. So which schools are ones that your test scores, your GPA are sort of below their averages. So you have your 30 schools split into the reach category. Then match target, that's sort of right in the middle, okay? So that's, my GPA is 3.7 and the average GPA at X college is also 3.7. Perfect, that's a match or target school. And then safety. So safety schools would be schools that you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get into. That's where your numerical averages are well above theirs. So let's say you have a 1200 SAT, but the average SAT at X college is 1050, okay? So that's well above, okay? So you want to rank and prioritize not prioritize, but you want to rank your list in terms of reach, match, target, and safety schools. So what I have here, this is sort of the final-ish breakdown. So after you take your 30 schools and condense it down, you really want to end up with maybe 2 to 3 in the reach category. And then maybe 2 to 3 in the safety category. And the bulk of your applications and the colleges on your list should be sort of right in the middle in that match target category. Now, these numbers can fluctuate a little bit. You do not have to specifically go 2 to 3 for reach schools, but you want to be somewhere in this area. Now, what you don't want is compare that last slide to this one. So you don't want the majority of your colleges and your applications in the reach category, and then have a few in the target, and then maybe 1 safety, okay? That's what you don't want, okay? No, 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 okay? We don't want that. Every year we have students that come to me, come to their counselor with a list that is very much like this. And every year we have a handful of students that don't get into any schools, okay? So please, when I go back here, please try to have the bulk of your applications in that sort of middle match target area, and then a handful of safety schools too. Okay. And it's really important, one last thing about this, every one of the colleges that are on this list, every single one, needs to be a school that you would be happy to go to. Okay. Because if you end up with a list like this one, the 6 to 8 reach, 2 to 4 match target, and 1 safety. And if you have, excuse me, if you get into that 1 safety and that school is not where you want to go, you sort of wasted your time applying to that school. Okay? So make sure every school on your list is one that you'd be happy to go to. Okay, so continuing with the refinement, okay, and the reach, match, target, and safety, here's some examples for you. This is sort of what I mean. So if my data, here's an example student, this is me, this was definitely not me in high school. I did have a 3.7, but I definitely didn't have a 1290 or 28. Okay? So my fictional data is that I have a 3.7 unweighted, I have an SAT of 1290, and an ACT of 28. Okay? I took both tests because I wasn't sure exactly which one I was better at or wanted to do. Okay? So an example of how to take those lists, or that list that I have, and break it down into reach, match, target, and safety. I have 3 schools here: Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, UC Santa Cruz, and UC Merced. So at Cal Poly, I'm really interested in the engineering program, which is very competitive. So their average GPA is 4.1, they have 1400 SAT and 32 average ACT. So compare that to my numbers are well below their averages. So that would be a reach school for me. Okay. Let's go down to the safety. So UC Merced, 3.67 average GPA, 1100 SAT, 23 average ACT. Now my GPA is almost exactly that, but my SAT and ACT are well above their averages. Plus the admit rate is pretty high at UC Merced. So that would be a safety school for me. That would be a school that I could most likely get into. There's always a chance I wouldn't, but I could most likely get into it. Now we look at the middle. So UC Santa Cruz, another great school in the UC system. Their average GPA is a little bit above mine. Their SAT is just a teeny bit above mine, and same with their average ACT. So my numbers are pretty much right on par with UC Santa Cruz. So in some ways I could, if I have a good application, I could sort of flip a coin, and it might be, I mean, you look at the admit rate there too, 51%. I could get in, I might not get in. So that's why it's right in that target zone, okay? Okay, so we've gone through foundation. Now we've talked about how refining works. Now let's go into the taking your list of 30 schools and narrowing it down, the evaluation part. Okay, I mentioned test optional considerations a little bit earlier, but I want to harp on it again here. So there are over 1,200 four-year colleges and universities that are now test optional for class of 2021. And a couple examples I have here: the UC system, For class of 2021 and 2022, they're test optional. Okay? And then they've decided to go test blind for future years beyond that. And then the CSU system has announced that they are test optional, sorry, not test optional, they are test blind for class of 2021. So what that actually means, so a test optional school means you can submit your test scores if you want. You don't have to, and it's not going to be counted against you if you don't. But if you have pretty good scores, it's to your benefit to submit scores. Because they will factor those into considerations for merit scholarships or that academic aid. Test blind means they don't even look at them at all. Okay? So in most cases, you can't even submit those scores to test blind schools. Okay? So test blind, they won't even consider them for anything. Okay? Test optional means they will give you positive points if you do submit scores. And then they would consider you for merit scholarships if you do submit scores. Okay. So a couple questions here at the bottom. Did you even take the SAT or ACT? A lot of our rising seniors right now have not taken a single test because they were planning to in the spring when everything shut down. So that's something to look at in the fall. Do you even want to take these? If you do take these, look at the scores and decide whether you want to submit those or not. That can also factor into your college list because some schools will be test optional, some will be test blind, some will even still require the scores. Okay? And then again, are you pursuing academic or merit aid? So consider that when thinking about this. Okay, college visits. Normally, you could travel to a college to visit and to take a look at the campus and talk with students. Things are pretty different right now. So most of this is going to be done virtually, which you can still do. Colleges are pivoting in an awesome way and turning all of their in-person visits online. Okay, so you can still visit with schools. You can't physically get there in person and walk around the campus, but there are even 360 virtual tours that you can take through virtual reality, which is pretty amazing that you could do. So college visits are a great way to clarify priorities. They are a great way to determine fit, if it's something, if you can kind of see yourself there. You can't, again, because you can't physically be there in person, you can't hear from current students that are there, but through social media, you can connect with students that are there. Okay? So definitely do that. And then college visits can help answer the X factor, and that's what your gut says. Okay? It's really important to listen to that gut. Not 100%, but it's a factor. Okay, so because we are in lockdown in many ways, college visits virtually from your couch, really important. Here's a bunch of websites for you that you can go on. You can search for that school. If you don't find that school on UVisit, for example, try Campus Real. There might be a virtual tour through one of them, okay? And then if you can't find anything in those first four, YouTube. There's always stuff on YouTube related to a college visit or a college tour at all schools out there. Okay? And then make the most of these visits. Okay. I would suggest that since you're doing them virtually, I would not have one screen open and touring a campus while you're making your lunch. Okay. Try to really focus on that visit while you're going through it. And when I say come prepared, again, you can't physically be there in person, so you can't really come prepared so much to a virtual tour. But if it's a live virtual tour, come prepared with questions that you can ask the tour guide. Ask questions after the fact of an admissions counselor. So that's why you really want to focus on those virtual tours, because questions will pop up. And if it's not a live one, if it's a filmed previously, then as you're watching that and you're jotting down your questions after the fact, send an email to that admissions rep from that school with your questions. they're happy to answer those, okay? So again, you can't take pics and journal what you see and feel, but you can journal what you see and feel from doing those virtual visits. Okay? Again, you can't eat on campus, but eventually at some point this summer, fall, some of these colleges will be opening physically in person. So try to take advantage if you can. If you can get there, try to. Safely though, safely. And then this is always, I say this to all my groups when I'm taking them on college visits. We have a prescribed tour that the college takes us on. Okay? That's always going to show you the top parts of the college and what they really want to show you: the football stadium, the 3 Starbucks on campus, things like that, which is important. But you also want to sort of take your own tour in addition to the marketing tour. Okay, so find those students to talk to, find those hidden spots on campus that are the best place to study, things like that. Okay. All right. So we have our list of 30 plus that we're slowly whittling down. So getting to a final list definitely takes time, it takes thought, and it takes communication. Okay? This is not something that you can go from 30 colleges down to 10 overnight. Okay? It takes time and thought. Okay? Ideally, your final list should be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 10 to 12 colleges or so. That number can be much smaller or even much bigger. I would absolutely say that the minimum you should apply to is somewhere in the 6 range. Okay? I would say that's pretty much minimum. Maximum, that's really up to you and really up to how much time you have. But getting into the teens and definitely over 20, that takes a lot of time to complete those. Time you might not have. Okay, so consider that. College visits, virtual or live, if you can get to the place later in summer or fall, can definitely help narrow your list. And I said this earlier, please don't keep a college on your list if it's a school that you can't see yourself at. Okay? If that's your one safety at the bottom of your college list and you put it there because your friend's applying there, that's not a great reason. Okay, so every college that's on your list that you will actually go through the application process, make sure it's a place that you can see yourself at and be happy at. Okay. All right, so some key recommendations for this whole process. So stay organized, especially if you get into those 12 plus applications, 15 plus applications. They can all sort of blend together. So stay organized. So know what you need to complete for each application. A Google spreadsheet is a fantastic way to do this, okay? To stay organized. Have a list of the colleges you're applying to, the due dates, the requirements, how many essays you have to write, how many letters of recommendation, etc. Okay? So stay organized with a checklist spreadsheet of all of this information. Absolutely don't forget to consider those non-academic factors. Okay? When you're in school, in college, you will really only be in class 12, 15 hours a week at most. Okay? There's going to be a lot of time outside of class to take part in activities, student organizations, go to sporting events, and go into a city for the weekend, go on a ski trip. There's going to be a lot of other things that are important to at least factor in. Okay? Academics are super important, but the non-academic factors are also important. So consider those. Start early in this process. Hopefully, if you're watching this video, start early over the summer to go through this search process because it does take time. Okay? Your best fit is definitely not your best friend's best fit. Okay? You can absolutely apply to the same schools. That happens all the time. But do your research and find out which 15, which 10 schools would be a really good fit for you, okay? You might have a couple overlap with some friends, but your list should not mirror your best friend's list. And then through this entire process, ask questions. Ask questions of your counselor, ask questions of me, ask questions of the admissions counselor at the colleges you're applying to, ask questions on social media of students that are at those schools. Ask questions, okay? All right, that was a lot of information. Thank you so much for listening. We have a lot of great resources on our website to help you with this process. You can check out our other videos on YouTube and definitely follow us on social media. So have a great day, everybody, and take care.